Mekel Bailey, costume designer for Baby Reindeer. How familiar were you with Richard Gadd's one-man show before you joined the series?
To be actually honest, I wasn't that familiar. It was all new to me. So yeah, I can't make up a story there. Yeah.
Hmm. Well, this is obviously based on his life. So what were your early discussions with Richard, like especially about Donnie's look and how much of the real Richard's style you wanted in Donnie's, and how much is Donnie's original style?
Okay, yeah. So in the beginning, in the early, very beginning stages, we met up, me and Richard. We kind of got to know each other, spoke about my ideas, his ideas, spoke about the real him, spoke about the character Donnie, how I envisioned him, and just we tried to, see where the crossovers ever elapsed and where in those moments, why was that? And then what do we do there? And then it was kind of just like building day by day, week by week, and then collecting all the costumes. And then we had this massive filter and fit in there, and then we kind of built it into the scenes and with a production designer that way.
Hmm. What would you say is distinctly Donnie and what is distinctly Richard?
I would say, I guess, the props, the hats when he's on stage, that's Richard. And then I guess Donnie, everything else in the show is Donnie.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So Richard includes like the iridescent fish scale unitard in episode
So
4.
when he's on stage, one with the comedy suit, he has this prop, this kind of I can't remember what it was. It's like this kind of furry animal. So that's Richard's own prop. Yeah.
Mhm. We have to talk about his suit on stage when he does his stand-up shows, Donnie. Like it's this like orange brown plaid suit with some like yellows and greens in there. And it's really eye-catching and it's kind of like ill-fitted a little bit. And it really works well against the whole aesthetic of the show because there's a lot of reds and oranges with the show. So what did you want to evoke with that suit and what went into design of it?
So with that suit, there was many back and forths, ranging from the pattern to the color to the shape, the size, whether it was big shoulders, small, whether it was fitted in the body, whether it was loose. And then once we decided on all of those kind of things, then we had to break down the suit to make it look worn in. It was from a charity shop that he would have found this suit. It would have been secondhand, and he would have like had many years of traveling and being around with him. So all of those things again, and the suit, it's somewhat his alter ego. It's his superhero costume that when you put on something and you feel at your best and you feel so strong and so bold that you can take on the world and that nothing's gonna because that's his safe place by being on stage and being a comedian. That's what we wanted to provoke with that. Also subtly drawn connotations to his heritage, being Scottish. So yeah, those little small little quirks in there. And then again with the colours, playing with the tone of the show and what the oranges and the reds evoke with the emotions there.
Hmm. Yeah, for sure. I have to say, I think Martha's wardrobe is my favorite of all the characters, just because of I feel like her clothes also go on the same kind of roller coaster of emotions that her actual character goes through, and because in the beginning it's really unsuspecting, like she dresses really nicely because it's like she's almost trying to like woo Donnie, or she is wooing him, and it's non-threatening and a lot of pinks, and then the colors get darker after her threat level rises. So
Yes, yeah.
how did you develop that aesthetic for Martha?
Yeah, so again with Jess and with Martha, it was again about meeting up in the beginning, understanding the comfortabilities with each other and where we can push the character. And then it was really understanding the different, I guess, states of mind of Martha, where she was, whether she was, in a good space, a bad space, a sad space, a happy space, all of those kind of things. So again, there's the animal prints, there's the clash of the prints and florals, there's just the bold colors, there's the polka dots. So all of these things again all have subliminal messages as to again where Martha is and who this character is and how we can evolve and show in progress. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, it's a very chaotic kind of wardrobe. It kind of feels like a child playing dress up a little bit, just like putting stuff together.
Yeah. But thinking it's done so great and so well, and it's her best again. And constantly there's this carousel and this conveyor belt of reusing the same things that she's had in her wardrobe because again, there's no money coming in to be buying new stuff. but
Hmm.
some ways how she manages to always be like a shapeshifter somewhat with creating these new costumes or new outfits every day.
Hmm. And I know you sourced a lot of the clothing from thrift stores and you went around London, right? So what was that like trying to find all these pieces?
Yeah, so I would say like 95% of the whole show for everybody's wardrobe was sourced from secondhand shops. Yeah, it was a trial and error. Definitely, you have to have a lot of stamina and know that not every day is going to be a good day because, based on either the size, based on then the color, based on the materials, all of those filters, by the time you then get down to, well, what is available. So again, but no, it was a great thing to even understand how different demographics or different parts of London have then different options available, different sizes or different styles. Again, just really delving into that because I wanted every piece of material, every outfit or every piece just to have a deeper character to it in itself, to be lived in, to have it to tell its own story as well, to
Yeah, no
opposed.
one's really super fancy here. Everything feels real and worn.
Correct.
I
Yeah.
was really struck by this, I guess, like structured pink jacket that Martha wears in the diner scene in the first episode when she
Yeah.
asks him if he's serious about her, and that's when things like start to kind of turn. And it has
Yeah.
these like shoulder pads and these patches on the chest. So where did you find that one?
Again, that was just again in another thrift shop. I think that was just one of those ones where it's hanging above the till. If I believe rightfully, I would say West London, but there were so many that I went to. But I just remember that day when I saw it, I was just jumping around in the shop, so excited, so elated. I called my supervisor, Imogen. I was like, "Oh my God!" And I sent her a picture. I was, yeah, very ecstatic, and I definitely kept pushing and having conversations with, Veronica, director, and the producers about this has to be used. We have to wear this. Yeah, I definitely.
Because it's like it's pretty, but there's something like slightly off about it.
Yeah, yeah, and just the colors as well, and just the mishap of it. It was just so perfect.
Yeah, for sure. I want to talk about Terry's wardrobe because she, as a character, she's also the most put together and she gets the happiest ending. And you really see that reflected in her clothes too. And she has a lot of like crop tops and she has this like lovely caramel coat. So what went into her aesthetic?
Yeah, with Terry again, she was always meant to be this kind of explosion of energy and new life into Donnie's life, and also be this calm, still space. So again, you see there's color with her, these little skirts, these crop tops. She's cool, she's fun, she's edgy, but then in her day to day, she's a bit more reformed, as you said, with that camel coat. And when she's coming from work, the trousers and stuff like that. So there's this constantness with her. So again, just like a lot of energy, but good energy. So that's where that kind of vibe came from.
Hmm.
And also to be remind him to be his true self as well. By her
Yeah.
being true self and bearing, her skin and herself and allowing him to somewhat, yeah,
Hmm.
bounce off of that energy as well.
In the finale, Donnie puts on this yellow jacket that he gets from Keely's mom, and throughout the show, we usually saw him in hoodies or just like button-down shirts and stuff. So, what was it like finding the right jacket and that shade of yellow for the final shot of the show?
It's actually funny because the other day I was going through my iPad because I'm about to start a new job. So I was clearing out the iPad because the iPad's only used for when I'm on work, those kind of jobs. So I was just flicking back through a lot of the pictures and I was just like, wow, like going back through all the options. And I remember, especially with that yellow jacket, we had about 20 options. So it was finding the right yellow, and then things like the collar, and then was there a hood, and then the material, and then the shape. So again, it was very people just think, oh, it's just a yellow jacket. It really wasn't. There's a lot of things that. So then we found out on the eBay. So that was
Mhm.
an eBay again, someone's worn used jacket. So that was a great find on eBay. And again, it was purpose. It was great because obviously on the inside it had this green material. And again, the green played with the show and the colors. So it was all purposely done.
Yeah, and it's similar to the plaid suit is still kind of like oversized and like doesn't fit him perfectly too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, finally, what was your favorite look to put together on the show?
I would say my favorite look was, yeah, the one that we spoke about with Martha. But I guess I keep talking about that. So second to that,
Second favorite.
what would be my I kind of like the outfit when she's in the fight scene. The
Mm.
polka dots. That actually wasn't a charity shop find, that we had to buy that because obviously just the fact it was a fight, so there could be doubles or rips and tears, etc. But yeah, I just, again, the rage, that's what I wanted to show with those spots, and how someone can come out like this red,
Yeah,
coming out of this
she did
black.
wear some animal prints here and
Yeah,
there.
so those animal prints and stuff like that, to me as well, was a great thing. Again, if you people saw that as well.
Mhm. So, well, Mekel, it was great speaking with you. Thanks so much for your time and congratulations on your Emmy nomination.
Thank you so much. Thank you, and love. Thank you
Thank
for taking
you.
the time. Take care. Bye bye.
Kasia Waliska Maimone, costume designer for the Gilded Age. Season two's costumes and hats just got bigger and bigger. What was the discussion like about the approach for season two now that you've gotten a season under your belt and you know all the characters?
I think that with each season, it's a new learning process. I've never done such a long project with the opportunity of building on previous knowledge. So the season two was this incredible opportunity of diving deeper into the historical research and building upon that knowledge that we had from season one. And I feel like I just kept learning more and discovering the period further and building on the characters' journey.
Mhm. Well, this season two opens with a bang with an Easter celebration, and once again, just so many different congregations, and you have you know, the main cast and background actors and gigantic hats once again. And what did you learn about Easter and Easter costuming, I guess, in 1880s New York in your research, and how did you develop all the aesthetics for and silhouettes for everyone?
I think that the opening of the second season, it's this challenging moment of creating a spectacle. We knew that as the opening of the season of a show called Gilded Age, it needs to deliver the spectacular glamour. And Easter was such an incredible opportunity. So I just started from the material that is on the page, which is the Easter celebration. We knew that in the 1880s and for many years after, the Easter was a celebration that was an enormous spectacle. We didn't have that much documentation from 1880s, but had a lot of documentation from later years, which was also extremely informative. It looked like the whole town was going to celebrate Easter, and the sizes of the hats from the historical research was just extraordinary, enormous. And a lot of the times I felt that it would be almost hard to believe that that was the size that was worn by the ladies of that period. But the historical research was proving this over and over again, that the scope was that extraordinary. And then it was all about creating the feeling and the colors and of Easter and the celebration and the opportunity for the society to show off, to present to create their fashion show that was ending up on the streets and causing this giant spectacle and admiration from everybody around them. So I think that was the starting point with the Easter celebration.
Mhm. It made me think about like how nowadays you don't really see big hats anymore. Like it's, you know, most people just wear small hats, and it's not, or maybe except at the Kentucky Derby, but it feels like it what are it, you know, like people just downsize in hats, but back then it was just like we need to show off like our wealth almost, you know.
Yes, there was, of course, it's humanity. So there is a variety of sizes of what people felt comfortable, but the style of the period was quite a lot of those hats were extraordinarily big. And that's what I chose for creating this drama of the moment that was the opening of the series.
Mhm.
We still see sometimes, like in Brooklyn, in some areas of Brooklyn, like for Easter, you do still see those incredible Easter hats. There are still moments of celebration that last till the remnants of it last till today. So it's this motive that I feel like we had such a privilege to dive into in the 1880s and create the spectacle. I mean, definitely it was a journey discovering the hats. In the first season, I think I was more restrained with exploring the sizes of the hats, but the more that I looked at the research, I thought there was so much, the sizes actually in the period were just enormous. So as we are starting the trial period for the second season, I created some hats with our milliners that were so tall that they barely fit through the door frames. And during the camera test, where you realized that it went way too far and had to chop them back to to smaller sizes. But then I think we found the framework of what was acceptable in the period and what delivers that incredible glamour that the ladies were seeking.
Yeah, for sure. And it fits in the frame too. One thing I love about the show is just your use of color, and it feels almost modern and experimental. And what you were saying before, like you didn't have a lot of color photography back then, and I love some of the color combos you use with like brown and blue, and like Bertha, she often wears a lot of like yellow, but not bright yellow. So how did you experiment, I guess, like with all these color combos for these characters?
The main inspiration came from paintings. Like I studied a lot of the visual materials from the period, which was anything that we could discover from the period. But for sure, a giant influence came from the paintings. And that color combination of this like citrusy yellow, greenish yellow combined with browns, that came from paintings. A lot of the color combinations were so unusual, but they also came from historical research of dresses from several collections of museums, which are extraordinarily well documented these days. COVID, in some ways, that was one positive thing about COVID, how it helped us because so many of the collections got digitized and we had access to collections in museums all over the world that normally we would not have access. That became the standard and the norm of all the museums, and kept discovering those color combinations and kept discovering the unusual, what seems to be unusual combinations of colors. I definitely dove deeply into the discovery of what existed in the period. This was a time of discovery of artificial dyes, and I think there was such a celebration of color. But a lot of the times I feel that colors in each period are inspired also by nature. I did take a bit of liberty by being inspired by nature combinations when it needed the combinations of hats and dresses needed a little bit more of a support from outside sources. So I tried to stay as close as I could within the period norms, but at the same time, knowing that we're creating this fictional story and we need to create excitement and glamour, I did rely on some inspiration from nature as support of color combinations.
Mm-hmm. This season, we also saw the return of Bertha, who or Turner, who was Bertha's maid, and she's now Mrs. Enid Winterton. So I imagine it must be fun designing sort of a new look for a character who's now of a different status. So how did you develop Turner's season 2 silhouette?
That was a really fun character to design. We knew that Enid, former Enid, Karen Winterton, was an advisor to Bertha. She already traveled between so many houses of high-end houses, and she was her fashion advisor. So we knew that she had this innate knowledge of what were the fashion standards. She also was breaking into the traditional level of society. So I decided to create this quite conservative version of super sexy Bertha that stays within the norm of society, at the same time uses her power of seduction to gain her social status. So I chose pale colors and very sophisticated, elegant forms, at the same time quite high buttoned and very structured and quite symmetrical. Unlike Bertha, who explores a lot of the organic forms and very courageous combinations, Enid stays within the very pale and subtle levels of seduction.
Mhm. And you are currently working on season 3 right now. It's in production. So what can you tease about the new season? What kind of costumes can we expect? New color combos?
We keep discovering. We're right now in Troy. I am in the production office. We just arrived here 3 days ago. It is always an exploration. It's so much fun to discover the worlds that Julian Fellows gives us on the page and visualize this incredible journey. It's such a fun historical discovery of the worlds of people, of characters, of circumstances. So it's a continuous diving into history and then supporting it visually, the creating representation of those spectacular moments. I think it's continuously building upon the knowledge of season 1 and season 2. I feel like every time you're given this opportunity of building further, you just have bigger knowledge. So I hope that will be new, exciting things coming out of it. I'm not quite probably ready to disclose a lot of the information, but it definitely, the exploration is happening.
More hats, bigger hats.
They'll be
Probably.
they won't be bigger than last season. I think we've reached our limit.
Every season, bigger.
Yeah.
Bigger hats. All right. Kasia, it was great speaking with you. Thanks so much for your time. We'll see you back here in a little bit. Thank you. Consolata Boyle, costume designer for The Regime. The show follows a manipulative, unstable female dictator, and you've dressed a lot of powerful female characters in your career, including Queen Elizabeth. And what have you learned about political fashion for women through the years?
I think what I've learned, or what I've been able to gather from my researches and thinking about this extraordinary subject matter over a few years, is that the women of power, they work it out so that they stand out. Whether it's standing out within a group of grey suited men like Margaret Thatcher, or how Elena, in her strangely deluded world, created her own look almost based on fashion, but just slightly to the left or the right of it, causing a feeling of dissonance and strangeness, but always utterly unique and unpredictable. There's 2 different elements that are sort of completely predictable, like, say, for example, a Margaret Thatcher. Within her monochrome environment, she stood out, absolute clarity with the clear, bright color blocks. And then with Elena, everything is different. Everything is slightly not what you'd expect. Everything is slightly off kilter, creating that feeling of unease. And that, it was fascinating to watch and to discover those 2 elements of how powerful women, or maybe not quite so powerful as they think women, dress or present themselves. There's so much about presentation and creating a look, creating an ambience, and in an effort to control the environment around them. But so much of it is creating a look and creating a mask of some kind to perform behind. those were the fascinating things I found out quite a bit about investigating powerful women over the ages.
Yeah, because it's like their clothes are very performative, because this is probably not how they dress in their day-to-day life, right? But they need to get a message
Absolutely.
across. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Everything is considered, everything is thought through in how to get from where they are to some end that they're aiming at, and is divorced completely from what one would call their private life. Very much so, very much so. Yes, absolutely.
I'm wondering, did you like think about how Elena would actually dress, like if she were just a private citizen? Like, was that like a baseline for you before you thought about her public facing wardrobe?
Yes, it's interesting that you mentioned that, because when we were working towards how Elena might present herself to her people or to the public of any kind, I had divided her off into her private self and her public self. And the private self is much more chaotic, much more lacking in control, much more vulnerable than the Elena that we see, no matter how crazed or how deluded is the presentation or the persona of the public Elena. It is dramatically different from how I imagined her privately. And that was vital to how I approached the whole project. Was in our visual exploration, there were two large areas of the private Elena and a lot of images, and the public Elena and many more images of that. So that was always the baseline. Like, below the public Elena, there lived the private, vulnerable, almost childlike, needing approval from her father, full of fear. That was vitally important to how she presented herself as the public leader as such.
I feel like maybe the closest we got to that is when she's sick, or she thinks she's sick, and she's in much looser clothing, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Almost like in hospital gowns, that all of that obsession with germs, with that whole vulnerability, that whole, where she's literally deconstructed almost in her strange carriage, that there's this oxygen bubble that she lives in. Yes, that's very much exactly how I would have, that portrays that element of that character, very much so, very much so.
Yeah, and I mean, and then like publicly, like, you know, she stokes a lot of fear and paranoia in her team, and also in her people. And you really do, like you were saying, you do get that sense in her clothes too, because it's like what you were saying, you know, it's like a mix of traditional and also unpredictable and off. Like, I'm thinking about that green like powered suit dress, and then like those like sheer puffy sleeves. It's just so, it's like, it looks right but also wrong in some way. Like, how did that outfit come about?
Wonderful combination of the sort of three-way stretch, lethal uh, silhouette that's created of the central core of Elena, and then you have these flowing sleeves that seem to come from nowhere, the kind of vulnerable, girly, I love you, Elena, and please love me. It's that kind of within the same person. And that was what's so brilliant about Kate's performance, is that she completely inhabited that, and within that one character there is the manipulative, unpredictable, terrifying, and the fearful and vulnerable. All of these things, wanting reassurance and yet wanting to dominate. It's a very, very complex and very, very lethal mixture within one character.
Did you assign any colors to like represent any of her moods? Like, if she was feeling scared, like, you know, it's like a red or something, or if she's feeling dominant, it's like a green.
Well, I think that when she's the paler colors were her at her most stripped back and vulnerable, and the stronger ones, so the clear primary colors of her palette, or when she is wanting to make a strong statement. And then when she's expressing her sort of nationalistic, traditional Central European vibe, there's a lot of softer, more earthy colors, and there's the use of embroidery and gentle things like that, where she's manipulating her people. So every mood of her variety of moods is expressed, we wanted to express through color and shape, absolutely shape the soft sort of wide skirts of the more traditional look to the absolute rigorous silhouette of her pencil skirts. And
You wore a lot of pencil skirts.
A lot of pencil skirts, which Kate wore with such good humor, and one was just fantastic.
Mm-hmm. Well, we have to talk about the Santa baby outfit. It was like, what was it, like lycra spandex? It was such a cringy performance by Elena.
Yes,
so inappropriate.
exactly.
Third. How did that look come together?
Where people thought, what's going on here? And but she gives the most wonderful performance in that. Lots of marabou, fake marabou, and her little Santa hat, and her wide tutu, and her patent boots, and her patent belt, and she just sings her heart out. And it was a joy to do, a joy to design, and absolute fun to film, and really riotous. It was absolutely fantastic. And she sang utterly perfectly, just off key, which is just a very difficult thing to achieve, but she did it perfectly.
Because she's a great singer, but she was told to sing off key.
Exactly, to sing that, like the karaoke scene at one of the first banquets, where she sings with her husband accompanying her on the keyboards. She was singing her heart out there again.
Mm-hmm. Well, finally, do you have a favorite look of Elena's from the season?
I think I so love the mixture of everything. I really enjoyed going from the sort of dirndl skirts with all the embroidery and the underskirts and the little blouses, the little traditional blouses and the headdresses, right through to the, I mean, it'd be so easy to choose her powerful black and gold dress when she's standing within the glass casket, or one of her immaculately tailored suits, but it's so much, every costume expresses so much of that strange, darkly comic, hilarious, yet dangerous character. So she holds up such a warning to our times. And I just think that all of them, because each of them express such a unique and important part of that character, I would just have to say that each of them was like a revelation to me once Kate got in it, that they were all a joy. And I was truly blessed in taking on that project.
It must have been fun, because a lot of them, like they seem like normal, quote unquote, like dresses and stuff,
normal,
but they also
normal.
seem, but very,
Yes.
it creates an unease and unpredictability with it.
I recognize this, and then the more you kind of look at it, you realize, actually, maybe I don't recognize this, and
It's
but
like
it's
perverse.
dangerous for what we know. It's dangerously close to. Just when you think I understand, suddenly she'll upend you, and you won't understand, or you'll be lost. That feeling of struggling and trying to find your bearings. Elena is queen of that skill. Absolutely.
Well, Consolata, it was great speaking with you. Thanks so much for your time. We'll see you back in a little bit.
A pleasure. Thank you.
Christina Flannery, you joined the Righteous Gemstones this season as its new costume designer. I know you were a fan of the show beforehand, so what was it like getting the call to work on one of your favorite shows?
Well, yeah, that's great. I have always been a huge fan of basically anything Danny McBride does. And I have a weird, like, religious upbringing. So it was kind of like a kismet match. I remember I talked to my agent and was like, I just really want to work on something like the Righteous Gemstones, not thinking actually it would turn into the Righteous Gemstones, but it was really exciting. And I think A lot of the times when you work on projects and you go in there like, and you're like, oh, this person, I'm so excited to work with them. And then you go and you're like, oh, man, they weren't like what they were, made out to be. This is like the total opposite. Like I was stoked to work with Danny and he's absolutely amazing. So it's just like, woohoo, perfect.
You can meet your heroes if they're Danny McBride. So.
I'm saying, come on.
Well, what was it like coming onto an ongoing show, and having to maintain in some way what's already been established with the characters' looks, but also adding your own flair and pushing it forward a little bit? Because I do think you did that this season with the characters.
Yeah. I think that, coming onto the show, there was a lot of every season with the show has a lot of different storylines that are going on. So this season, like the kids are becoming the head of the church. So that gave us opportunity to kind of make their wardrobe even more outlandish, more expensive, more lush. So coming on and kind of changing that up and putting my own spin on it, was fun. We got to push a lot of things. I think, a few things that we kind of kept were like the color palettes. Danny really likes the colors of the characters. So you can kind of notice like Judy's in blue and Kelvin's in green, Danny's in red, or excuse me, Jesse's in red. So it was a little bit of that. And then, yeah, just taking it and putting my own spin on it and like what I felt, what would happen with like Kelvin, for example, how he was still kind of a preacher, like youth pastor, but like I took it more into like the TikTok youth pastor world. So it was fun. It was a good transition.
Mm-hmm. One thing I love about the show is that these people are wealthy, but they don't have the best fashion sense. And what is it like dressing characters who are desperate to look cool, but aren't pulling it off?
I have to say it is fun as hell. It is so fun. Like it's like the stuntedness, the camp, like, it's silly. Like they don't have access to a lot of this stuff here. So, maybe they would have a local stylist that would come in and be like, oh, these are the greatest fashions from New York. And they were obviously like, maybe 5-10 years out of style. So it was a total exciting, really fun experience for sure with doing that for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because what they wear is very opulent and gaudy, but I feel like you also ride that line of being insane and ridiculous, but not making fun of them.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Is that like something you think about for each episode?
Yeah, I think that's a perfect Danny is very much the kind of person within the show that he doesn't want them to be the joke. He wants the like what they're saying and things like that to be kind of the joke. It's really special in that way. So yeah, I mean, we could put Judy in like a crazy, ridiculous, over the top dress, but it's also like vintage Bob Mackie. So it's like really cool to kind of ride that line of, okay, so she's gonna wear this like, glitzy and glammy thing, but it's like, it's Gucci. So it's like totally accessible in ways. And Danny, of course, his character, it was kind of like referenced of like George Jones, Elvis, things like that. So I think that he's the one out of all of them that kind of sticks to the similar vibe. I just kind of added a little bit more of that like Hank Williams Jr. 80s stuff, which is more of that sequins and like that Dolce & Gabbana suit he wears in like episode 1 is like so ridiculous, but was like a good transition to gaudy fashion, kind of cool, kind of really bad.
Yeah. Well, I think the piece de resistance of the season was episode 3, Baby Billy's oyster shell costume.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand this wasn't written script, but how did this come to you, this design, this outfit, this look?
Well, again, going to figure out a way that I could take his storyline and run with it was, Baby Billy's now, he's doing all these shows. He's basically a lounge singer in, I guess, Florida. And it's like, what would Baby Billy want? Like, who would he look up to? So it was taking a lot, obviously, Liberace, Wayne Newton. And then I am always so just like oh my God, I'm just so inspired by drag queens. So I feel like, you know, matching that all together, it was just like, how far can I go? I want him to have this like really cool, like, you know, elements to him that also kind of represents Florida and maybe even Charleston, which would be oysters. Some people say clams. It's not a clam. We're not in Maryland. So even Walton says it. I'm like, it's not a clam, you know that. But yeah, I think it was like just going to the extreme and adding that flair of like the walkabout so he could kind of play with it and use it when he's on stage. And it again is something that it's funny, but it's like it's not like really making fun of itself as much. It's like he's on stage, he thinks he's really like being cool and he's doing, you know, all this elaborate stuff. And then the reality is he's just a walkabout of an oyster and it's actually ridiculous. And he's the actual pearl. So yeah, that was the kind of the angle for that.
Well, what went into the build of it? Because when you like look at close-up shots of it, you see all the details of the crystals and the pearls, and I just also love the colors, you know, the pastel blue and the coral pink. So what was that build like?
Those colors were delicious. I went to LA and I just kind of like I had some different ideas. I was going back and forth with different colors, and sometimes I think, you know, when you find the perfect fabric, that kind of just, you know, evolves into its own thing. So it was, you know, what does an oyster look like? They're not necessarily the most beautiful at times. They can be kind of gray, but you know, occasionally you can get that like beautiful algae bloom that, you know, you see sometimes in South Carolina that has those really beautiful textures and colors to it. So it was that. And then climbing in, like, you know, I don't know if you've ever been to the fashion district in LA. It's wild. So you're just climbing over clothes, trying to find, fabric, trying to find things. And I found this beautiful, like organza fabric. And I was like, oh my God, this is the way we need to go and build off of it. So it was started from that and then getting layers. And of course, I think if you can tell from watching the show, more is more when it comes to rhinestones. So it's like, if we had a beautiful top, it's like, okay, this isn't enough. Let's get some crystals on it. Let's get some crystals on it. So it's kind of, you know, a little bit of pearly hand beat. It was just, you know, my Taylor Agra, God, she's like incredible. She just laid it all out and we were like, more, okay, more. And then Kelly, who made the shell, you know, there was quite a bit of trial and error for that. And then also just like the harness to put it on so you could see it without the actual, you know, the visual of the harness showing, but he would still be able to take it off.
I love when he takes it off later.
Yeah. And he just like pushes it. Yeah. And but when you turn around, we have this invisible zipper in there where you can't even tell how it was connected, which is helping us with some stuff we might be working on this season too. So it's cool. It was good to kind of have that experience to use it in the future.
Yeah, sure. I also loved episode 5, which is set in 2000. It very nostalgic for me because I was also in high school at that time, and I loved all the looks. It was like Jesse channeling like Fred Durst. So, what was all your inspo for capturing the turn of the century?
Fred Durst, absolutely. I agree with you. This is also my generation. So, you know, one of my favorite characters has, you know, I was asking actually all the way back to the interview when they were saying that they were going to be doing like late 90s, early 2000s. I was like, okay, cool. Like, as long as we can do Jinkos, then I'm like totally happy.
Jeans nowadays, I'm like, I just burst out laughing.
I know. It's like, we have to have this. Like, it was such a pivotal thing and where we went to school and stuff like that. So it was Fred Durst, it was Korn, it was, you know, even Judy, she's kind of more Britney Spears, Christina Aguilera, you know, even like, you know, Kirsten Dunst, Claire Danes and all that stuff. But then also, you know, with little Kelvin, he was like even Stevens. It's hard, you know, because he's
it's the Hawaiian shirts
and the puka shell necklaces and stuff like that. So it was kind of like Shia LaBeouf, like even Stevens and things like that was the reference for him. But yeah, it's all also just going back to oh my God, what did I wear? And like looking at photos of me and like my friends and just going on Facebook and seeing stuff that you're like, oh my God, so fun to use those as references.
Yeah, sure. I need more 2000 flashbacks next season. Well, 4th season, working on that currently. What can you share? What can you tease? You just tease something about the attachment for the shell you could use for the season.
I would just say that it's going to be even more bigger, more elaborate than the season. I can't say much more than that. It's just like, it's to me, some of the stuff that we've done this year is kind of like, I just never seen it before. It's incredibly bizarre. So if you see the oyster shell and you think that's a lot, it's going to be even more than that. And it's not going to be just Baby Billy. It's going to be a lot of other people.
The more marine life costumes.
No, not marine life, but a certain kind of little otherworldly type thing for sure.
Interesting. Well, Christina, it was great speaking with you. Thanks so much for your time. And
Thanks.
you get to stay on because everyone's coming back. So.
Perfect.
Welcome to Gold Derby's Meet the Experts costume design panel. Today we're joined by Emmy nominees Kasia Waliska Maimone from the Gilded Age, Consolata Boyle from The Regime, and Christina Flannery from the Righteous Gemstones. Thank you all for being here. I feel like costume designers, you guys always have to be mindful of budget, or maybe you just don't have the biggest budget to begin with. But what is one time where you found something super expensive and you were like, okay, we just need to splurge on this piece? Kasia, let's start with you.
It's always an interesting balance. We are for sure on Gilded Age. We are very well supported by HBO, and have a very respectful budget, but it is a giant strategy of what ends up going on camera. So we definitely had to learn within the first few seasons, what is it that we see on camera, what is it that we don't see on camera, how to strategize the planning of what, do we see enough of period shoes that are crazy expensive, or how do we use jewelry? It's always like a strategy that whatever ends up in front of the camera, whatever is coming into focus, that's when we splurge. That's where the money gets spent. And I think that I don't have hesitation to spend money on the main characters, but I'm also very careful how I spend money on characters that are in the second or third dimension of the frame. So I think that logic is so deeply coded into the body that I don't think we break those rules too often, that you really strategize it where the money needs to be seen on the camera.
What was your biggest splurge this season?
The third season or second season?
Or second season.
I think we spent a lot of money on Bertha for sure. That's a continuous money, but that's what the character calls for.
Yeah.
So I think that that's pretty consistent with her character.
She deserves it for her rise. Consolata, how about you?
I think that, again, I agree completely with what has been said, in that you need to be so careful where you position your investment in things, so to make sure that you get value and it is part of everything. It makes sense, but it's also seen on camera and it makes sense for the character. I'm inclined to spend quite a lot on fabric. I love fabric. I always have. So that is vitally important to what I do. So searching for fabric, searching for unique fabric, for embellished fabric, or to get plain fabric embellished. So a lot of the money went on surface detail, on the surface detail of particular costumes, and that would be where I would invest a lot of thought and money, and again, if it makes sense for the character and for the story. And that's where I would strategically, to use that word again, position money so that it makes sense and it moves the story along, and it expresses some element about the character of the person wearing it. I think that's absolutely vital. But knowing where, and that can be gained just by experience, I think, is knowing where everything is going to be seen, how it's going to be lit, how it tells the story of a character, and but being very, very strategic about how you do that, and that you gain that by doing it and by making mistakes and by having correct decisions and knowing instinctively when this needs to happen now. I need to put this in this position or on that character. So I do that quite a lot. I do, and I think we all do in many ways.
Yeah, do you want to position yourself to get the most bang for your buck?
Exactly.
Christina, how about you?
I totally agree with them. You know, if you've ever kind of come from the bottom and you've been a supervisor, you totally understand like what it's like to have people breathing down your neck. So you want to support your team and stuff like that. And I agree, it's what you see on camera. And I would say for me, it was the Bob Mackie dress.
Yeah, easily.
Mhm.
Well, on the other end, what's been your best find for, I guess, the cheapest price? You know, maybe at like a thrift store or like online on like Etsy or something. Like this thing is great and so affordable.
We do find there's sometimes incredible cheats, and that's I would agree with Consolata. It's the fabric obsession for the Gilded Age is that we share the same obsession. It's like, how do you find fabrics that represent the richness, that represent the history, that represent that layers of fabrication that does not exist anymore. So we're always looking for creative cheats, whether we need to implement embroidery or printing to enhance the fabric. But from time to time, you do find something incredible for shockingly cheap price. And that always is like a crazy gem that we encounter. And I always try to have this very, very sober eye for viewing those fabrics, that you don't attach price tag with what you're looking at, that from time to time you find something for $30 that is shockingly appropriate and great. And the same thing goes for jewelry finds. Like we create a lot of jewelry, we make a lot of jewelry, but at the same time, our shopper continuously looks for finds on eBay or antique stores. And from time to time, there is a gem showing up that comes from that hunting, that is quite surprising and beautiful, and ends up on a principle, and it looks like $1 million.
Christina, how about you?
That's a good question. I mean, I think a lot of the times, you know, when you're doing something really fun and exciting, you can get product placement, which is another way to get, you know, really amazing items that, you know, people want to, especially when what I've done before is like found people that are like small indie designers on different shows that I've worked with that are kind of, you want to help elevate the look of, you know, their stuff and your look. So specifically, I would say it would be like, you know, working with indie designers and kind of like getting their stuff like out there for everybody to see. It's been a while since I've been on the show, but I will say we are in Charleston and the pickings are very slim. So thrifting is not necessarily something we have access to. A lot of the stuff that we have to get is online. So, you know, we're getting a lot of things on Etsy and stuff like that as well. So yeah, it's a lot of finding really amazing pieces. I agree, like dupes and things like that are so exciting to find for, you know, tennis shoes that you don't see on camera that are crazy fashionable, ridiculous and tacky, suits that are elaborate and fun over the top that are like, you know, $200-300. Those are the great finds that are really exciting, that you just have a really good tailor that can kind of make it look amazing, and bada bing bada boom, you're done.
Sure. Consolata?
One particular costume that I really enjoyed doing and was exactly what you say. It was, we used very, very simple basic fabric. One of Elena's outfits was made from denim, really basic, utterly simple cotton denim. But then on top of that, there was a lot of embellishment, a lot of embroidery, a lot of lifting it right out of the ordinary into something completely extraordinary. And between the lighting, Alban's lighting, and the way it was in the set, just the whole thing came together just so absolutely beautifully. And it's a great example of collaboration, of how the skill and the joy of collaboration with the costume, what was done to a very, very simple, basic fabric, the lighting, the set that Elena walked into wearing that costume, all of it worked absolutely together. And it was a very cheap start with physical work done, hand embroidery, and embellishment. And then the whole thing hopefully sang together. And that is the greatest, I think the greatest achievement of filmmaking, is that complete and total collaboration where one head of department and one department is completely reliant on the other. And that was a total example of that for me, was how that at its very best could work well. So starting from something utterly simple and elevating it into something hopefully extraordinary, and that told a story and that added to whatever was going on and to the character. So I think that's what we aim for all the time, and sometimes we're lucky that it works and it all comes together when everybody is singing off the same hymn sheet, and that's what we try to do always.
Yeah. I mean, so much talk about fabric. I gotta ask, like, do you each have a favorite fabric to work with?
I think it really is. It's based on the character and what you're trying to do and emulate. It's really hard to say one, because like you're saying with the denim, like you can find denim and it's incredible and it really works for that character. And then, you know, if you organza, anything you could find, it really just depends on what you're trying to, you know, what you're trying to create. And again, with lighting and camera and all that, you can have something that, you know, doesn't necessarily look as beautiful and lush, but when you see it in the interior of a set with like amazing lighting, it's like, whoo, fabric is incredible. But yeah, it just depends.
I would say that we are lucky that there's still so many fabric suppliers. As we seeing those worlds of fabric suppliers shrinking, there's still enough for us to find what we need. My fear always is that the supplies will disappear. We know a lot of factories, a lot of mills are shutting down. A lot of the European mills are moved to Asia, and we're seeing a very different shift of the quality of laces, a very different shift of quality of embroidery. And I always have this fear. There's like, what's going to happen when there is just so much less? But it seems that it's right now between the European fabrics and American fabrics and stuff that comes from England is we still have hundreds of options that are incredibly valuable choices for creating this variety of characters that we need to create. Our walls of swatches are so fun in our design studio in Brooklyn, because it's literally thousands of swatches that we developed over the last 3 seasons. And it's this library, this elaborate library of fabrics. And it's pure joy to see that we do have this playground still, incredible playground to draw from.
I want to come over there. That sounds great. Can I come visit you?
Just putting dress up at the
Because
Gilded
it's
Age.
really a trip. Like we are so proud that the design team and our team. It's like we're so proud of that space, and we have the most incredible space with giant windows. It's a dream studio.
Oof. Sounds amazing.
Oh,
Consolata, how about you? Anything besides denim?
I think I couldn't agree more than everybody is saying. It's also, I would fear, as well as for the shift of or the changes in fabric production and the reduction of traditional fabric production. There's also, we need to be aware of the lessening of traditional skills, the skills of embroidery, of handwork, of hand sewing, of all of these incredibly precious traditional skills, that they need to be protected, and they are machines are driving that out. So this movement now, which is starting to protect traditional skills and people becoming interested again in traditional skills and handwork and all of that kind of area that was forgotten about for so long, those are skills that in our business we need absolutely and need to protect, along with the factories that produce wonderful fabric and the mills that produce fantastic fabric. It's the skills that go into all of this and are the bedrock of all of this that need to be protected, and or else we will lose our brilliant source material of that feed our imaginations. So I think that needs to be noted and to be taken care of, and to be people to be aware, particularly in our world, which is so fast moving and so sometimes so brutal, that we need to take care of these traditional, more gentle skills, because once they're gone, they will be gone forever. And
Yeah.
it's something
It's
that we need to be so aware of.
Yeah, it's like lifting the new generation of
Exactly, exactly.
Well, finally, nowadays, fans might dress up as characters you've designed for, do their own versions of your costumes that you've created. So, have you ever dressed up as a character yourself, when you were younger, perhaps?
I can so personally say no. I'm fascinated by all of this. I'm fascinated as like a total and utter enthusiastic observer, that sometimes I feel that if you step across that magic line, somehow you lose some sort of power. So I always feel you need to stay on the 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 magical observer, be the total observer and the creator, but never step across the magic
No
golden
Halloween
line.
costume for you.
No.
I've never dressed as character, but I must say that I have endless joy from hearing about costumes that make each year the Halloween night the costumes from Moonrise Kingdom. And I was not aware the first year that it was such a hit for Halloween. And I thought it was just so fun that that's where it was represented. So there's definitely I think that anything that what we do is when it starts resonating with the public, it feels like such an extra bonus, and it feels like such a joy when you see that people, however they reinterpret those costumes, because sometimes you just see this like enormous variation of reinterpretation. Is just still so fun to see that.
Yeah, and it's also like the longevity of it, right? Because the movie is like 12 years old now too, so it's like people are still into it. Yeah. Christina, how about you?
I mean, of course, I am obsessed with costumes. Costumes, anything, like Cersei Lannister, let's go. I've been anything you could possibly think of. I lived for a really long time in New Orleans, so it wasn't just Halloween. It was, it was Mardi Gras. It was, is it Tuesday? Is it Wednesday? We're dressing up. Like, I am so obsessed and have been ever since I was little. My mom used to make my clothes, and I was weirdly Mennonite, so I wore bonnets and dresses and stuff. So it's always been in my world to dress up. So yeah, I am absolutely obsessed with dressing up for Halloween. I think it's such an amazing experience. I was so lucky last year to be driving by on Halloween, and I just saw this really weird like shell looking thing, and I was like, is that a turtle or is that Baby Billy's oyster costume? And I jumped out of the car, and it was head to toe his costume, and it was just to see that. It was honestly, I think I started crying. My mind was blown. It was, in front of a gay bar, and it was like amazing. It was like it was incredible. So yes, I absolutely dress up. I would love to dress up as the Gilded Age. I love the costumes. I love all of it.
You got to go to Brooklyn before October.
Yeah, I'm on my way to Brooklyn. I will be there. I'll be there for my fitting. So yeah, I totally do, and I will continue to do that until the day I die. Bury me in a costume.
So we know you'll be Bertha for Halloween then. That's great.
Yes, I love that.
Well, we have to wrap, but it was great speaking with all of you. Thank you so much for your time, and congratulations again on your shows and nominations.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good one. Bye.